Happy Thursday to everyone. I know we're all trying to get our finalizations of our papers going, so I'm going to try to make this short and sweet and to the point. Um, this week's video was good, tied into just the book and the chapter reading. I found my favorite section of this class so far, or just the chapter readings so far, and I'm going to go into that later on. First, getting into the videos with Dr. Paul. Um, I like what he had to say. Kind of gave me some ahas. The first one being assumptions. That are assumptions are good. They can lead to some positive outcomes. Previously, instructors that I've had haven't really explained themselves as far as assumptions and what they could lead into. I was under the impression that assumptions are negative until I joined the MLA program and had some instructors dive into how assumptions can lead into positive and creative thinking. So that was kind of an aha for me. Um, the main one for me, though, is learning the vocab of your subject. While that's not anything new, um, for me, it really resonated because a lot of what we've been reading in the last couple of chapters is based on the presidency. Is my example, and um, I've never been a political person that's really followed politics. Um, Growing up, my family, my parents and I, we didn't really discuss, the Democratic, the Republican Party, Independent. We didn't talk about those things. And so growing up, I would hear people have conversations about it, um, but I really didn't understand. Um, Moving forward into college, a lot of my friends talked a lot about politics. And I would sit there and listen and act like I knew what they were talking about, but I didn't. Every once in a while, I would chime in and I'd get some funny looks, and I think they knew I didn't know what I was talking about. Um, my first professional career was as a college recruiter, and so I spent time with a lot of educated folks who, once again, talked about politics. And so at that time, I knew I needed to learn the language, I needed to understand exactly what everybody was discussing. So I think it is really important to learn the vocab of your subject, so that way what you have to say can be credible, it could be relevant when you're having conversations. Another point, excuse me, another point that I liked was he talked about check where your thinking is going. So you can have good assumptions, or you can have bad assumptions, which may lead to implications or consequences. And so just making sure that your conscience of what you're talking about is very important. You can't just assume that people are going to know what you're talking about and how it's going to lead into a relevant topic. You have to be careful with your words. That leads into the chapter this week, where he talks about the three different types of thinking. Um, the main one that I want to focus on is the middle, and that is, excuse me, the skilled manipulators. Um, I think we see that with our politicians. Um, I think we've really seen that with this president that's in office right now. Um, I think you can be a skilled manipulator and be positive, um, but obviously there's um, some things going on with our society right now that I think skilled manipulators can be taken very negative. They obviously have their own agendas, and That's not good for America. It's not good for our people right now. I think that our educators can be skilled manipulators, um, but in a sense to where they are trying to get our young people to understand the content and how it's relevant. Um, but by doing so, you have to show all points of view. And that's something that Dr. Paul um, spoke about in the video is, his perspective, his point of view is of Richard Paul coming from Chicago. And so for me, as Christopher Show, giving somebody my point of view, I need to make sure that the people that I'm teaching understand where my point of view is coming from. And so as long as you are doing that, then I guess, quote unquote, you can be a skilled manipulator as long as your listeners and your students have all the correct information. My favorite part of this week is on page 310. There's a saying in there that I have always, not always, but since 2000, I heard it. I really didn't understand it. And now it's just come home and it's got me excited. So on page 310 at the bottom, post hoc ergo propter hoc. And the reason why I really like this phrase is my favorite TV show of all time is The West Wing. It has so many wonderful actors and actresses. I told you I've never been a political person, but after watching this series, it really piqued my interest. It has Martin Sheen as the lead. He is the president, and the way the script was written was wonderful. Um, you really have to listen and just take everything in with this series. It will educate you, it will challenge you, it will push you. The reason why I like that phrase is because in the second episode of the series, season 1, episode 2, that is the title of that particular episode. And in there, the example that they talk about 6 minutes in is they come to the president and they say the Ryder Cup is not coming to the White House. Now, obviously, fast forward to this year's championships, and I believe every championship team so far has declined to go to the White House and meet the president. Okay, so, foreshadowing right there. But they come to him and say, your jokes that you made about the Ryder Cup team have been received as negative, and so that's why they're not coming. Then another example that they get is the reason why they lost Texas in the election is because he made a joke about Texans wearing big hats. And he utters that phrase and he says, sometimes one thing doesn't have to do with the other. And that, to me, when I'm reading this in chapter 13, was just like, wow, now I really understand the episode. I really understand that sometimes in life, one thing doesn't have to do with the other. And I think we as human beings need to know that and not dwell on that so much. That sometimes fate, whether it's fate, it just happens. And so those are kind of my takeaways for this week. Once again, if you need something to binge watch, West Wing, it's on Netflix. It will definitely educate you a lot about the media, about politics, and seeing things in your own perspective. So thanks for that, and I appreciate you guys.